Namaskar. So we are back with same-sex rights India debate. Now, I'm Raga Olga de Silva, or Totally Out Now, as you know me. During our last episode, we started at the start, if you remember, and we asked our esteemed panelists, what is same-sex marriage rights discussion all about? Today, we will talk about mental health issues faced by the LGBT plus community when basic human rights are not made available to us. The central government recently opposed same sex marriage rights in India, arguing that same sex marriage is against our Indian culture. It is unnatural, and that marriage is a union between a biological man and a woman, and that marriage between two people of same sex will bring chaos to society. Statements like this adversely affect our community. Today, we will discuss with expert psychiatrists, including two from the Indian Psychiatric Society, if homosexuals really are abnormal and whether we do have a mental illness, the impact of Section 377 on the LGBTQ spectrum, what conversion practices are being used in the name of religion and culture, what is considered mental illness, and what role can society as a whole play in changing this narrative. Please join me in welcoming our guest today. Dr. Sudhir Bhave, Professor and Head of Department. It's a long name, NKPSIMS and LMH Nagpur. I haven't been to Nagpur, Dr. Bhave, but I love the idea of being in Nagpur.
Thank you. You are
So,
welcome anytime.
thank you. Dr. Amrit Pattojoshi, psychiatrist, social worker, welcome to our show. Thank you for giving us your time. Welcome, our dear friend and Dr. Surabhi Mitra, psychiatric human rights activist. Nice to have you back, Surabhi. And I should call you Dr. Surabhi, although you're a friend and I am on first name basis with you.
Glad to be back, Raga.
Thank you. Now, before we start, I just want to remind our audience about something. In September 2018, homosexuality was decriminalized in India. The Indian Psychiatric Society, or we can call the IPS at this point in our conversation, said homosexuality was not a psychiatric disorder. Coming out in support of decriminalization of homosexuality, the IPS said in a statement that it recognized same-sex sexuality as a normal variant of human sexuality, much like heterosexuality and bisexuality. They further stated that there's no scientific evidence that sexual orientation can be altered by any treatment, and any such attempts may in fact lead to low self-esteem and stigmatization of the person. The IPS had in 2017 constituted a task force on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues. The task force continues its work to endorse the stance that homosexuality should not be considered a mental illness, much less a crime. It was a long statement. I wanted to read it because it kind of sets the scene for us. And I know, Dr. Amrit, that you were part of the task force. Can you just take us to those days and start at the start? Why was it set up? And what really is the task force for?
Yeah, there's a very interesting story to it actually. I was an active member of IPS, but in 2017 I suddenly saw that my name was not there in any task force, not in any group. So I called up our president and told what mistake did I make that I am not part of any IPS group. Did I do it? No, it's an error. And then our secretary, our ex-president, Dr. Gautam Shah was there. He called me up and I had a fight actually. I told, why did you drop me from the entire 300 list? How could you drop me? They told me, no. In hindsight, we're making a LGBT task force and you're going to be the first convener of it. And in 2017, I did the first conference on LGBT in Bhubaneswar. In India, it was the first time. We called a lot of psychiatrists, we called a lot of activists. It was a brainstorming exercise where we wanted how to carry the thing forward, because IPS was getting a lot of bad flake for not, making it into a disease. A lot of people were making a lot of statements. So we thought, let us channelize everything and bring it into force. So I had a talk with a lot of people, and then we decided that we'll put up a position statement in our website. And when the meeting of the first cabinet was there, I still remember the day when I went on stage and told that IPS, this statement which you are telling, I had put it up on the board in the PowerPoint and told that IPS should carry this. And then post that event, many people told that this guy is spoiling IPS. Many people told, don't have dinner with this guy. He's the man who is going to spoil IPS like anything. But I'm thankful to a lot of people, senior people, be it Dr. Ajit Bidde, Dr. Kersi, Dr. Avinash, Dr. Gautam Shah, Dr. Dalal, they stood by me. They told, no, Amrit, we have to carry this forward. And we finally managed to get it on the website. And rest is history. When the judgment came, 3 of the Supreme Court judges quoted our, statement. And then the best part about IPS was we did a lot of sensitization programs. We went all over the country. We talked about, how to look after LGBT rights. We talked about hormonal changes in transgender communities. We talked about how to give certifications. People were afraid of giving certification when it came to gender changes. So we have managed to get a lot of, and then therapies, conversion therapies. There was a controversy 2 years back. We were very, very firm against this. So as you know, IPS has been very, very proactive and has been very helpful in getting it forward.
But I'll go to Dr. Bhave shortly. But Dr. Amrit, just tell me. So, you spoke about some people came in the way, some people did not like it. No, were they from within the IPS who were opposing it, or is it outsiders from society who were?
We are not concerned with what the outside world is telling when we are talking as a society. But then it's a very important aspect that you're getting the negative elements on track. Sensitizing them. You cannot have everybody 1,000 out of 1,000 telling that everything is okay, and that is where the good things come out. When there is some opposition, you tend to water it down. You tend to get their point of view. People will oppose, but once you show them the right path, if they come back on the path, that's the best part about IPS. That everybody came on board. If not everybody, most of them came on board, and that was a very difficult task.
Brilliant. So I must thank you officially from all of us for actually putting that statement out, because it did help with the petition, as we know. It made lots of noise around, and we were sitting here in London and actually clapping for all of us there, because we need allies like the IPS for sure. So I'll come to Dr. Bhave on this. Dr. Bhave, in 2018, again, taking us back to 2018, because all this is fine. Section 377 was overturned, and we were in the midst of so many people calling us different kinds of names, bullying us, as we know. And there you were, the IPS had made this statement. But do you see that anything had changed within the system itself? Like, I know for a fact that earlier, a lot of us would never even, we would hesitate to even call up a psychiatrist, just in case we were judged, or in case there was something else that would happen to us. We were scared of the reaction, or our parents would take us forcibly, and then we didn't know what was going to happen. So did you see any change since 2018?
See, I would say that, as per my observation, the change occurred in two groups. One was people with homosexuality. I did, like most of my psychiatric colleagues, we did start seeing people with homosexuality more common, though not very significantly, but then numbers did increase to some extent, because I'm certain that homosexuals got a kind of validation about their own orientation issues from a body as high as the Supreme Court. So, for the fence sitter who are not the activist type, for them that was a confidence booster, and they found it more easy to come out at least to the psychiatrist, if not to the family. So, number of people with homosexuality who had emotional difficulties came to us more easily. That's one thing. And secondly, I think in the general population also, in the fence hitters, people who are not either completely against homosexuality or totally for it. So at least some proportion of them must have got, convinced about the Supreme Court's decision as being right. So destigmatization has certainly occurred in a part of the population, which was a fence hitter, as regarding the attitude of homosexuality is concerned.
So do you think that, statements like this, or Section 377, decriminalization of that's important for society to basically change its stance and evolve? That helps
Certainly.
society? Yeah?
I think when something comes from the highest judicial standpoint, I think that is taken seriously by most of the country.
So,
Not all, most of the country takes it seriously. I clearly remember, Amrit, that in IPS meetings, some of very senior members, they would very vocally oppose the notion of homosexuality, and that getting, I know, you were part of that back and forth on one occasion. So, yeah, things have changed, and I'm sure they're going to change.
So, Dr. Bhave, before I go to Dr. Surabhi, I just want to ask you a very pertinent question. And what happens in cases where the psychiatrists themselves are homophobic?
I think that's a very unfortunate situation. See, because in a country like India, like most countries, the homosexual would look up to the mental health professional to validate his or her orientation. And in India, at least, I mean, get it across to the parents, talk to the parents, try to convince the parents. Because by and large, I mean, in India, there's a saying, Ghar ki murgi dal barabar, which means that somebody in the home cannot convince some other person in the home. So it would take an external expert to do that. So, I mean, the homosexual would see us as a important bridge between themselves and the parents to kind of convince them that what's happening is not abnormal; it's completely normal. So that's where we stand, and we should stand. So I think any psychiatrist or mental health professional who is homophobic, I think he is doing a disservice not only for the homosexual community but even for the science of mental health as well. I mean,
Sure.
I know people who have that point of view, but then I think that's a big disservice to the society as a whole.
But there are processes and systems in place to manage that, just in case, somebody comes up to you and people are homophobic. What do you do?
Um, See, if it's a layperson, I mean, not a mental health professional, then I mean, we have to talk to the person, we have to counsel them. My biggest, I mean, statement for homosexuality is like, I mean, many mental health professionals, that it is not a question of choice. I mean, that is something that I try to drill into the heads of parents of homosexual and community at large. I mean, had there been a choice, I mean, a choice point where I can either go this way for homosexuality or heterosexuality, then things would have been different. But then there is no choice. I mean, if I'm a homosexual, I am a homosexual. You
Okay,
can't be
wonderful.
hetero.
Dr. Bhave, thank you for bringing this up, because that's something that I'm going to come back to you again and ask all three of you. Because if it is not a choice, the whole subject matter today is, then are homosexuals abnormal? Do we have a mental illness? So that's my whole question. Coming to Dr. Surbi, now you and I have spoken about this in the past, and I'm really interested in a country like India, which has so many different religions, and the central government says that society, will come in the way of the culture of society. So I just want to understand, what are the typical issues you face or barriers you face from parents when they bring their children to you who have come out to them. And we spoke about conversion practices, for instance, and some of them are really, really painful to listen to. So I will give people a trigger warning. Anybody watching this, listening to this, please be warned that there may be things we discuss that may be painful. So, Dr. Subi, do you want to give us a little bit more light on this?
Yeah, so I have undergone, I have had a lot of parents coming to me and talking to me in a sense that, this is against our culture and this is against our religion. And especially this is against the Granth. I mean, the thing that is written in a religion. Say, for example, in Hindus, there is the Gita. For the Muslims, there is the Quran. For the Christians, there is the Bible. So they always quote this, that in these things, it is a sin, it is absolutely abnormal. And religious wise, they send their children for conversion practices. And so there are different types of conversion practices. So earlier, way before, there used to be lobotomies done. That is, they used to drill a hole in your cranium, that is your skull, and they would think that homosexuality would be cured, or the spirit of the homosexual will come out of that hole. So that was there earlier. It would damage a lot of people's brains, and a lot of people would die because of that. So earlier that was practiced. Later on, they were put into concentration camps. So, the Nazis had concentration camps. Similarly, there were certain conversion practices happening in which there would be concentration camps, where there would be experimentation on the genitals of the homosexual people. There would be rapes happening, especially with the lesbians, just to tell the lesbians that, this is the real deal of a life of a heterosexual, and that is what you should experience, and homosexuality means nothing, and this is not the reality. This is the harsh truth, but also there would be a lot of times they would not be fed food, they would not be given water for days, they would be hanged to the wall, they would be chained a lot of times, just to see that the spirit of the homosexual comes out in a way.
Sorry, I'm going to
These days
interrupt.
now,
Sorry, yeah.
religious practice, yeah,
Sorry,
these
what's
days now
happening now?
religious
Yeah.
practices, yeah, are happening more often. So the conversion practice is more of the religious kind now, where there is not much of a physical damage to the person, but a lot of psychological hammering is done, in which the person is told as per religious guidelines that how wrong it is and how it is a sin and how it needs to be changed and how it is a choice which you can make.
So I'll come to Dr. Amrit in that case. Just tell me, if a patient comes to you, or parent comes to you, or whoever is the consenting adult comes to you with someone, and they actually want you to help them with the conversion therapy in whatever way, how do you react to something like that?
I think they come more with hope than with expectations when they come to me, because people now read up, they read a lot of literature, and that's the hope they come. And I always look at when two parents come, I look at one parent, somebody is an ally. We just have to search in the eyes. I do that simple thing. It's not very complicated. If you're a little emotional, if you can just catch the emotions in somebody, you understand. One will be complaining and one will be little, as if somebody wants to empathize with the kid, but because of the social stigma or anything, they are not able to do it. So I am the social support to them. I thought it's normal. What's the big thing? And I look at the expressions. The moment they find that somebody is calling it normal, they give somebody gives a sigh of relief. And that is where I work on. I work on the parent. I also work on the kid. I tell them, give your parents time. It's easy because you are empathizing with something, you are able to understand it. For somebody who has been 50 years, 60 years, known only one thing, telling them that switch on, switch off, it's a process. Now you have to be slow, you have to be empathetic towards your parents' plight also. We cannot just stamp everybody is there homophobic or this. It's something, it is ingrained in them. It takes time. We have to just catch hold of the small windows and enter into them, and talk about examples, talk about people who are living a normal life, make them feel that we are accepting it. I am accepting it. If I am accepting, a lot of people are accepting it. What is society? Society is what we are. If 10 people call somebody who's walking nude on the street as normal, it becomes a normal thing. So we are not concerned with that. Just because 10 people are calling this abnormal, will not call it abnormal. So I work on one parent.
Sure.
I work on small things. It's a very important thing. It's a process. It takes time. I told we'll get along. But I see somebody crying. I help them cry. I make them cry, and then I talk to the parent. I tell you, think about a child who is always sad, who is always crying.
No, but tell
You might.
me, but if I am the person, I've come to you with my child, and I'm forcing you to do something, have some therapy in place where my child can change and become straight again, become heterosexual again. Do you have things in place where you can work with the law, for instance, or if somebody's forcing someone? I know of a case where they were treated really, really poorly. So can you work with law? Can you get the cops involved and say this is what is the recourse?
I think I see a lot of people now. Now, let me
Yeah.
be very honest, because people know I have been working on this. A lot of my friends throughout the country also call me upon these things. A lot of people call up. People call me up, because I see many of the psychiatrists. You have to bring the psychiatrists in line also. It is not just that but nobody forces it, because they know this guy is not even talking about it. We are not even talking about it. And if they bring somebody, he is already past the legal age. He might be 18, 19, or 20. Nobody can force. And in our society today, we cannot force somebody. No, nobody can think of forcing something like that. I have never come to such a situation where I need to talk to somebody, because I'll tell you two incidents. One, after we did this, there was a sting operation where 5 psychiatrists were identified who are doing conversion therapies. You know, and I was, because I was the co-chair at that time. The newspaper group called me up. It was a newspaper group in Chennai, and we told, please don't flash it on, because we don't want a confrontation between the doctors and something like this. Let us work on these 5 psychiatrists. So we worked on the psychiatrists. We managed to do that. Last year we had an issue where we took down certain YouTube videos. Like, we were talking to Sudhir sir, what happens if a psychiatrist is like that? We made an inquiry committee. I was looking after it. We took down the YouTube videos. We managed to, getting into confrontation with people who have ingrained things in them is not making any change. But if we deal with them softly, quietly, with love, with affection, and firmly, that this is not acceptable. What you're telling is not acceptable.
Sure,
Next time you
sure.
cross this line, you're going to get into the law. You're going. So that is how we work. So if somebody does something forcibly, we have to talk to the child. You have to look at somebody who is a guardian to the child and work on that. I think going to the police will make more harm to the kid than if
Sure.
everything fails. Then I think we should do the law.
Okay,
I think
okay. So,
parents are very reasonable. They're not as unreasonable as we think they are.
but I'd like to believe that, people who are forced. So while we may have these very wonderful conversations and we believe that the intent is lovely, but at the same time, we know for a fact, I mean, I receive lots and lots of messages where people have been forced to go through therapies, very, very much
I,
so.
I, talk,
Yeah.
I talk about one example where
Okay.
the parents forced, will
Yeah.
not give you money for, studies. So this child went away, as Surabhi was talking about, was raped repeatedly. And he went to one psychiatrist who came to me. I had to put him in a, house. I had to fund him for 2 years with my friends. And we managed to bring him or her, whatever you tell, back in normal life, where he or she got disconnected from the family, because families sometimes do the other way around. They might not make you do things, but they'll force the child to do things by passive aggression, in terms of not being very active, in terms of, but removing a lot of benefits, removing a lot of things. So that's one way we look at the parents who do these things, and that
Yeah.
is much more rampant than the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen all kinds of cases, and we try and talk to individuals. And what I've always wonder whether there is a recourse. What happens? What are the numbers that we can call? Who do they reach out to? Because sometimes they're very vulnerable. People who are in this situation are extremely vulnerable, and it is difficult when you're locked up in your room and there's no one else there but your parents. How do you manage when your phones are taken away from you? How do you manage? But we'll come back to that, because I think, Surbi, I think I'd like some examples from you as well. But I'll go to Dr. Bhave. Dr. Bhave, ever since you made that comment about that it's not a choice, that you understand it's not a choice, I've been thinking about this again and again. It comes back to me. If it's not a choice, then is there a gay gene? Because I've been on so many shows lately, and there is one particular person who keeps on throwing on your face saying there is a gene, study says there is a gay gene. I'd like to know about this gay gene, please.
See, when I say there's no choice, what I basically mean is that homosexuality significantly has got biological roots. Now, the roots of homosexuality have been studied, and it has been shown that its biological roots, to a small extent, psychological roots, then other things like situational homosexuality, developmental homosexuality, they're all kind of temporary variants. But largely, I believe, like most mental health professionals, that the roots are biological. We are born with them, and at a subsequent date, they manifest. Now, when we say biological roots, now again, I mean, this for general public for consumption. I mean, there are different lines of evidence. Why call it biological? One line of evidence is in fetus, as this prospective homosexual is in the womb. Some studies have shown that it's the level of a circulating male hormone in the fetal blood that probably decides the sexual orientation subsequently. So that's one biological parameter which is completely beyond control. Secondly, I must add here there is no gay gene as such which has been identified so far, but genetic studies have shown that there is a higher probability of another homosexual being there in the family than general population. For example, it has been shown that twins, especially identical twins, if one of them is homosexual, the other is more likely to be homosexual than population. Like for example, if in population the say prevalence is 1 to 2% of people, then in case of an identical twin, that increases significantly. So those singular genes have not been identified, but genetic basis is rather certain.
Okay, very well put, Dr. Bhave. Thank you. So, Surabhi, Dr. Surabhi, for me, what is important now to understand this mental health that we talk about, mental health, where people keep saying, oh, you have mental health issues, you have a mental illness, people keep saying. So, do you think that the mental illness, is that true, or does it come from these kind of social pressures that we have, which society puts on us, constantly putting us, keeping us away, or trying to convert us, or trying to tell us that it's against our culture? So is that why we have mental health issues, or is it a mental illness?
So, as you know, Raga, I would absolutely disagree with it being a mental illness. And it's not only that I disagree with it, the Indian Psychiatric Society also disagrees with it. Psychiatry in general, it disagrees with it. American Psychiatric Association disagrees with it. I mean, every I think, mental health, you can say, body in this world has disagreed with it being a mental illness. Secondly, yeah, the point that you raised about us being socially shunned away from a lot of things, us being constantly asked to change and being told that it is a choice, and that there are conversion practices that are being done. A lot of people are being forced to do a lot of things against their will. That adds to the mental health problems. So if I tell something about myself, so a lot of when I was coming out in my I think teenage, during that time, during in my family, I was constantly being told that okay, you can be out in the family unit, but don't be out socially, don't be out publicly, don't tell your friends, what is the need, and whatever you want to do, you do it in the closet. So even if you have, earlier I did not have family acceptance. Yeah, I was called names, I was called slurs, lesbian word was used as an abuse, honestly. Later on, when it was accepted in the family, as I said, I was asked not to go out socially, not to talk about it socially. So that was a problem. At my workplace, I couldn't talk about it. While growing up, being a student, being an MBBS student and then an MD student, I was told to not talk about it at all, because I may not get the degree, I may be discriminated against. So all those things happened. Then that added to my mental pressure, because in a way that I thought that if I'm able to accept myself, first my family was not able to. Then when my family accepted it, I cannot tell my friends. If I cannot tell my friends, how can I tell the society? How can I live an open, clear life? So everything started adding to my depression. I had to I even had antidepressants in between, to be very honest. Myself, being a psychiatrist, uh, I couldn't even come out to my mentors till the time I passed my MD, because I was told that, as you may not get the degree, etc., etc. So, yeah, all these things added to my mental health issues. And I had a lot of depression, I had a lot of anxiety. A lot of times I even developed certain features in which I would get repetitive thoughts sometimes, and it would harm me in a way that I would keep on feeling that this life is not worth living. Why am I alive? If I cannot be open with my partner, then what's the use? Then there is another issue of not having your own society with you. That is, you cannot have other homosexual people, you cannot because you can't look at someone and just say that this person may be heterosexual or this person may be homosexual. So you don't know. So sometimes in the beginning you feel that you're alone.
Yeah.
You don't have many people around you who may identify as homosexuals. But then later on, as I grew up, I got to know a lot about the other people. I read up a lot. I'm being a good reader. I got to know about so many things going on in the world and in other countries, which gave me hope. And gradually, I could come out of that mental health issue that I had. But again, Raga, I would come back to the point that I'm still very privileged as compared to the other LGBTQIA people in the society. I'm quite privileged that my family accepted me, quite privileged that I could come out to the proper mentors who could guide me. As I had told you last time, I had come out to Dr. Sudhir Bhave first, because I identified proper psychiatrists who were not homophobic, and I was very sure that I could come out to them. They explained to my family, I could come out to my friends, then I could come out to the society, and then finally I could have a public ceremony. So it took a lot of years to reach that point. But again, it was only my privilege that made me do it,
So
that it
listen,
could happen.
thanks,
What
thanks.
about the other LGBTQI people, yeah, who suffer from so many mental health issues?
Yeah, so Dr. Surabhi, that's a really valid point, and this is what I keep telling myself also. I'm in a place of privilege. I can have these conversations, but I also go back to my time when I was like much younger, and this was not available to me. What was not available to me, also the fact that I could actually pick up a phone or go and meet a psychiatrist. There was too much fear. So we are living in a very wonderful age where we can have these open conversations. But at the same time, I'm also very mindful of the fact that this actually and there's an entitlement around it, which is only a privilege of the few. There are so many of us who don't have this privilege in India itself, in Nagpur itself. There will be very few, who can access this. I'm going to come to Dr. Amrit here, which brings me to this authenticity is important. As young people, we are told that live your authentic life, be yourself. How safe is it and how important is it for people, and I'm talking about homosexual, same-sex people, for the LGBT plus community, how important is it to live our life authentically? And what would you tell the younger people looking at, watching this program?
It's a very, very important and pertinent question now. Now, if you look at India, you look at the happiness index. India, if you are made to believe what we hear in TV and radio, it is the best country in the world. Everything is gaga, everything is good. But we fail much below Pakistan, Sri Lanka. Look at every country, India comes lowest because every point we are not living authentic life. We are showing something and we are somebody else. We are thinking something, we are telling something else. And that is the biggest problem with us, our young generation now. The Insta life and the real life are all different. The real and the real life, that's a huge difference between both of them, and that's where all the sadness comes into it. So when we are privileged, when we have everything going right, then also we try to project things which we are not. Now look at somebody who is marginalized, somebody who belongs to a minority class, somebody who is always how do you expect them to live an authentic life? The whole thing is, I'll just tell you, my friends, I posted this in 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 my WhatsApp status, and in many groups people have called me, oh, you homo, the things. I don't mind all these things, but the people are very, very sensitive. Now somebody has a issue, how will he or she feel? It's everywhere. People, the moment you turn your back, he'll be telling her, "Ye to this is this." You get the point. The whole thing is, if the society in general does not become authentic, we as individuals cannot remain authentic. I think the acceptability, the whole society is living in a very, very make-believe world, and that's where the major issues in life are coming out. So I just cannot claim that I'll be what I am as long as I'm not accepted the way I am.
Yeah, but research again, this is where research comes in. It shows that when you are authentic, when you take your entire self to work, for instance, all of us, most of us work, that's when the productivity levels increase, and that's when you are really able to give back to, to your strength, to your skills. Now, we don't live that life. I mean, a lot of, sorry, a lot of people can't take their authentic self, you said, because of societal pressures again. What will people say? Even at workplace, for people to come out, it's such, there's so much of fear. I mean, I lived in New Zealand. I'll give you an example. I lived in New Zealand and I was working in New Zealand. I had a great job there. However, and New Zealand is a liberal country. There are laws against discrimination and all. But what happened at the workplace? It is made up of humans, and humans, some of them are homophobic, some of them are not. And the ones who were homophobic didn't say anything to your face, just the way they treated you, just the way work was not given to you. So those are various ways that we feel the pressure. And Dr. Bhave, on that, I just want to ask you, how do you manage when people like us, like people from the community come to you and want to have live an authentic life, but they cannot? So this is where the whole problem is. Society comes first or we come first. So how do you create a society where, and what is the role you play as part of that?
Yeah. See, without doubt, it's a utopian, idealistic statement to say that live life as you feel from inside. I mean, be absolutely authentic. But I think, this perhaps partly an answer to your earlier question to Amrit, that in being really authentic, the homosexual has to weigh the cost benefit analysis. See, because at times the cost of being authentic can be too high. I mean, it might outweigh the benefit. Now, as Surabhi said, that she is in a privileged position because of family, because of profession, because friends accepted, and all that. Now, think of a girl who is homosexual, staying in a village with Orthodox community, with panchayat and all that in place, and she coming out, she can be killed, right, for being a homosexual. So I think whenever we as mental health professionals have to advise the homosexual regarding, being authentic, I think we have also got to take into consideration the social cultural context of that person. I mean, for an urban client who is living in city, who is educated, family is educated, the whole social circle is educated. I mean, it would be much advisable for us to tell tell him or her to be completely authentic. I mean, not have courage, don't fear the society, and so on. But perhaps for somebody who does not have that kind of privileged background, then I would not be so open about suggesting authenticity in its full glory, but maybe in measured ways, in ways which she could disclose to these people, but not to these people. So I mean that kind of a partially authentic, if and any term like that can be used. I think so.
Selective.
Yeah, no, but that's what Dr. Surabhi said earlier, right? You have to partly live in the closet. So basically, you live in the closet, then you come out only when it is safe, then you go back in the closet. That's what we are suggesting as society as well. That's the society we live in.
I think the second part of your question is what are we doing for the
Yeah,
society? I think that's a very important part. And what IPS is doing, what Amrit and his colleagues have been doing, I think that's a very important step in that direction. The society on the whole, I mean, apart from the wonderful Supreme Court judgment, needs to be made aware about the various facets of homosexuality. The society has to understand that homosexuality is not a matter of choice. If the person is a homosexual, he or she is a homosexual. Nobody can do anything about that, and they must have rights equal to heterosexuals. So I think creating that kind of awareness is significantly the responsibility of a mental health professional.
sure, fantastic. Because I think that's what we need. We need allies. We need lots of allies who have influence on society. And I think
Yeah.
that's where IPS has played such a big role. I'm going to ask the audience, please feel free to ask questions. We've got such fantastic panelists here today. Make use of them. And normally you would be paying thousands of dollars, right? So Dr. Bhave is smiling. I'm going to ask this question to all three of you. I want to have a view on the, now we'll come back to the crux of it. So, is it true that we are abnormal? I'm just going to come back. I want to understand, and I know you've responded to this, but I want to ask it upfront. Are we abnormal? I'm going to start with Dr. Surabhi this time. And
I did answer to it
I'm going to
already.
ask you again. I'm going to ask you again because we've listened to all this, and I'm going to ask you again, and I want you to say why or why not.
Okay, so if it comes to our looks, we don't have like 12 fingers or 30 fingers. We don't have two noses. We don't have four eyes. We look like exactly like any other heterosexual. We look exactly like a human being. So physically, there is no problem. Mentally, if you ask me, if I talk about myself, I have done well in my studies. I have done well in my career. I am doing well with whatever I do. So I don't think there is an issue there. And mentally abnormal means, okay, I don't know, but if you consider all the psychiatric disorders, I don't have any except the ones that I mentioned. That earlier I did have some amount of depression and anxiety, but that was because of the reason that I was asked to be in the closet and not because I was a homosexual. Honestly speaking, if somebody asks me, I am happy with this life. I am happy with this queer life that I lead. If somebody asks me that, would you, by chance, if you get an opportunity to actually change into a heterosexual and lead that life, I would say no to that, Raga. Honestly, I am happy with who I am. I am really in a good space. Earlier too, and as of now as well, and even in the future, if you ask me whether I would want to change or lead somebody else's life, no, I wouldn't want to. And yeah, that's my answer to all of that, that no, we are not absolutely not mentally abnormal or any way, any in any sense abnormal. Societally, we live a life, we have psychological issues just like anybody else. We are philosophically very literate, we are erudite in certain things. And even if the other LGBTQ spectrum could not get that much of education, that much of equal space in the society, but they are absolutely normal, if you say, if you look at their lives. So no, I don't agree with this at all.
It's brilliant. I was wanting to listen to this straight from you because you're part of the community. You're also a psychiatrist. You have a lot of experience in professionally as well as personally. I think we need to clap for Dr. Surabhi. Really, it's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for actually sharing this so openly. I want to ask the same question to the two doctors from the IPS now. And then there's a fantastic question put forward by Kavita Arora, which I'll come to Kavita, come to you shortly. But Dr. Amrit, let's hear from you.
For me, normal abnormality is a statistical construct. Just because 10 people tell that hitting a dog on the street is normal, we will not normalize it. The thing is, this is a basic thing. It's just because the majority tells something, we will not accept it. Like Surabhi told, we are all equal, we are all similar. It's not a choice. Once it is not a choice, it is not abnormal. In terms of the thought processes, in terms of the behaviors, in terms of the way they react or act to situations, I think discussing this, I think this should be closed, that we are abnormal. because that has never been discussed. Why bring it up again and again and again? Why do you know validation for this? Everybody is same, similar. We have similar set of thought processes. We all are equal in all respects. I think this question should not be brought again and again. It should be buried deep into the deepest sea and kept. That is accept, that is done and dusted. I think there's no question of abnormality here.
Brilliant. Dr. Amrit, I
Justify.
hope that I hope we can send a open letter to the center actually saying that this is it. Don't repeat this 100 times because we can. This is not even a point
Yes,
to argue
we
on.
have the same thing again and again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Dr. Bhave, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question, because ultimately it comes down to, are these people abnormal? I mean, for not only for lay public, but even in the field of mental health. I mean, is there an abnormality? Now, if you look at it a little technically, now what's the abnormality? One way to define abnormality is deviation from the ideal mental health. Okay, deviation from the ideal mental health. The next question that arises is, what is ideal mental health? I mean, if a homosexual is abnormal, I mean, does he or she not fulfill the criteria of ideal mental health? Now, criteria for ideal mental health, they have been defined multiple times, and different, erudite workers in the field have given their own definition. I think I would just like to illustrate the point by, say, criteria given by someone. I mean, since you asked this, I recalled it. A person called Jahuda. Jahuda was a worker in this area in mental health, and he said that to define ideal mental health, the person has to satisfy 5 or 6 criteria. Okay. Now, if one checks the homosexual against each of these, we can ask ourselves that, are they satisfying these criteria for mental health or not? Like, for example, the first criterion he said was a positive view of the self. Does a homosexual have a positive view of the self? Yeah. I mean, the homosexuals who have got well adjusted to their homosexuality do have a positive view. Second is a capability for growth and development. Homosexuals have that. Autonomy and independence. Homosexuals have that. Accurate perception of reality. Fourth, homosexuals have that. Positive friendships and relationships. Again, yes. And lastly, environmental mastery. So homosexuals can definitely have a mastery over the environment. So I mean, you take any criteria for mental abnormality or normality. I just give one example. So a homosexual can fit the bill of having a normal mental health. Nowhere can you see him or her, not satisfying these criteria. So I mean, if you even analyze it technically, there's nothing to say that they're abnormal.
So this is again fantastic because so far we've only heard the argument from one side, pointing fingers, constantly calling us names. And this says that, you're telling us, you're proving with evidence in a manner that, what, this is absolutely normal. We are normal. And I'm going to stand, with my head held higher, not just high, higher, proclaiming that this is what Dr. Bhave, Dr. Amrit, and Dr. Surabhi Mitra said to us. Now, there's a question from Kavita. Kavita says, as adults, what can we do to help children to feel that they have the possibility of growing up in this country, even after they realize they are queer? So, who wants to take this up? You put your hand up and you can decide. Dr. Amrit, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go for it, because you know what happens. 4 years back, there was a drawing competition in my daughter's school, and then they put up this issue as the competition's theme, and I actually loved the theme, because they had put up the LGBTQ as a theme, and this seventh class girl went to Google, search what is it. Somewhere the acceptability comes when you start little early. In no terms I'll be trying to make them change their orientation or their anything. It's not just that, because it's not a choice. It is, if you look at the definition, yes, there is a biological underpinning, there is a psychological underpinning, and there are certain, if you look at experiential things. Now if I am made to eat onion and I don't like it, and I like potato, that's quite normal with things, no? So that you make somebody forced to do something, and he or she does not like it, is not able to relate with it. So somewhere those things, if it starts early in the schooling, how to respect people, the number one thing is respecting individuals, not not their choices and all, respecting individuals, Bullying is a art that has been learned from class 4 or 5. Parents are some way indirectly, they help in bullying. So bullying, if it is stopped, if name calling is stopped, if such things are taken seriously, and I'm not just talking about homophobic phobia. There are a lot of things, body shaming, financially somebody's not wearing good dress, somebody, small things, subtle things. Somebody comes from divorce, the parents are divorced, they are separated. Anything and everything adds to it, and homophobia is one of the common things which we also see. So somewhere, if our children are taught to respect people much more, respect people's choices, respect people, I think most of the things will improve in our society, and we'll be a happier society. We'll not be busy pulling each other down. We'll be busy holding each other, holding each
And
other's arms,
uplifting. I
helping them. And
agree.
that's the most important thing which we lack in our society today, and that's where we are failing as a nation.
Very well said, because a lot of children don't even understand this discrimination. They learn from us. We learn from society, all of us, right? But thank you. And I've got an interesting question from Captain Arvind Shankar. And sorry, Kavita, thank you very much for that question. Captain Arvind Shankar says, can you share some insights into the medical challenges a person from the trans community faces? Now, who wants to take this question? It's open. Dr. Bhave? Uh,
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we say trans, I suppose we are referring to transgender people. Number of challenges are significant. Now, these days, I mean, with huge amount of information being available on the internet, transgender people do know that there is a solution to that, and that they can undergo sex reassignment surgery and all those kind of things. And most transgender people who are literate, they at some point in time would like to get converted to the opposite anatomical sex. Now, if the person has the awareness as to what is to be done, and if the person has the financial resources for what needs to be done, and especially if the family is supportive, then things are rather smooth. But then, I mean, you generally you do not have all this constellation of all the very, I mean, favorable things surrounding you. In case of most transgender people. So now, I mean, for transgender people, I think what is to be done technically, medically, is clear, perhaps clear to all. So, just in a nutshell, I would like to say that for transgender people, for somebody who is past the age of 18 years, somebody who is an adult who uh, would like to get converted to the opposite anatomical sex, um, first of all, he has got to be examined by mental health professionals, specifically psychiatrists, preferably two of them, who examine the patient independently and certify that this person does not have any mental disease, no mental disorder, and this person has got uh, gender identity which is not congruent to his anatomical sex, and he's fit for undergoing any treatment that can convert the person. So, a psychiatrist certificate is the first task that needs to be done. Second, of course, is I mean, in all the countries, the person needs to go to an endocrinologist, a person who gives hormone therapy to, I mean, induce hormonal changes, physical changes of the opposite sex. And generally, if the person is okay in that role for about a year or so, only then he or she can go for the gender reassignment, sex reassignment surgery. So these are the different steps that a trans person needs to take if he or she wants to get
sure.
reassigned to a different sex.
Thank you for the detailed response, Dr. Bhave. Captain Arvind Shankar, I hope that answered your question. And Dr. Surabhi, I just wanted to understand, you are now also available as an LGBT person, basically online as well, to consult. Are the number of
Yeah.
people who reach out to you have been increased over the last few years now?
Yes. So, again, Raga, to come back to a story, I had come out publicly after the ceremony, and it was a Sunday. I still remember it was 9th January, and 2022, 9th January 2022, and I had this NDTV interview to go for. And it was a Sunday, and I was, talking to my father, and he was just a little skeptical about how my profession would be after this. He thought that maybe, patients would reduce, there would be homophobia, patients would start thinking that this doctor herself has mental health issues. How can we go and get treatment from her, even though she's a certified psychiatrist? So all these things we were discussing, and again I went into, depression, and I had a severe breakdown, and I slept all throughout the day just for nothing. And I woke up just 5 minutes before the interview, and I somehow just gave it, on live national television, and it went really well. But it's because, even now, if you ask me, if you wake me from sleep and if you ask me questions about LGBT, I can just answer them in sleep. So that is a completely different scenario. But this thing really scared me. So coming back to your question, have my patients increased? So the patients have increased in number, even from the non-LGBTQ spectrum as well, and from the LGBTQ spectrum as well. So I have a helpline on my social media, on which I get a lot of calls, and irrespective of that, for consultation I get a lot of calls. For the GD letter, that is a gender dysphoria letter, which is used to be given to the endocrinologist and for the plastic surgeon for the surgeries, etc., that I am giving. And I get to talk to a lot of people from the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community as well, to explain to their parents and to their siblings and to their family members as to what it is. And also non-LGBTQ patients have increased, because I think they got this feeling of me being a very open-minded and a very socially acceptable psychiatrist, even coming from the LGBTQIA spectrum. So yes, it's a good news that patients have increased, and people from the LGBTQ are coming out more and more, especially to me. And I'm glad that I'm able to help them in whichever way possible.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I'm just going to, before we end, I'm going to ask each one of you one question. So, therefore, are we saying that society is ready for same sex marriage? We'll start with Dr. Bhave.
If I talk of the Indian society, the honest answer is most of the Indian society is not ready. It would be the people who would think that it's quite okay, the people who agree with the rights of the homosexuals in marrying. Uh, on this date, they are in a minority. And I think we still have a long way to the entire society to be ready for that.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Amrit, you?
Well, I agree with what Dr. Bhave is telling. We are not ready, but then we cannot wait for them to be ready.
Okay.
Something good to happen, we should not be waiting. That India is a huge country, lot of languages, lot of culture, lot of thought processes, lot of opinions. We cannot just wait for something good to happen. That's my personal opinion.
So we keep striding along and we start the process, right? We have to wait. Society is us
They have to
at
do
the end of the
something
day.
so that you'll accept it. Somewhere they have to be made to accept it. If they don't accept it like that.
And Dr. Surabhi, what's your view on this?
See, Raga, if we see historically, every change has taken time. It doesn't happen overnight, or it doesn't happen within a few months or years. So the struggle is ongoing. I will give you certain examples. I'll talk about child marriage. I'll talk about women's education. I'll talk about women's voting rights in India. I'll talk about sati pratha, which was very prevalent. There was discrimination against untouchables. And later on, you see, there was a revolution happening for each of them. And once that revolution started, once the legal system changed, once the judiciary accepted, there was a change. Now, the sea change happens after years. The basic change starts from within right now, but the sea change happens after years. So, just like 377 decriminalization, nothing, the society was expecting something earth shattering would happen. There would be complete chaos and havoc in the country, and God knows what these homosexuals will do, and God knows what will happen. So, it was there prevalent during 377 decriminalization. But once that happened, a lot of people's mentality did change. And even I could come out freely after 2018. I could talk about it freely. So we were no longer criminals. We were open to the society. Similarly, I think, as Dr. Amrit said, we cannot wait for the change. We should actually hope that the legal system legalizes it. And then gradually, once the society understands that, oh, it's not a crime, oh, it's legal in India, then there would be a real social change.
Thank you, Surabhi. You just voiced my words because I actually believe in it as well. I think I think society will be as ready as we allow them to be. It's a slow process. I heard so many people say, and just for people who haven't watched this program earlier, I am a mother of two. I was married once to a man. I came out only in 2019 publicly. I was out, of course. I'm with my partner, same sex partner, for now 16 years, over 16 years. We raised our children together. Our children are constantly asked, who are 25 years old, are you gay? Because they've been brought up by two mothers. So they didn't have the gay gene, people, sorry. And as I say, I also tried really, really hard to be straight, but I didn't have a choice, as Dr. Bhave said, and I am who I am. I live my life with authenticity. And I believe that a lot of people told me that the world is going to fall apart because I was getting married to a woman. Nothing happened. I'm still waiting for that world to fall apart. So nothing happens, people. In fact, I think with examples of Nicola and I, Surabhi and her partner, Paromita, I think the world becomes a more loving place. Like I love what Dr. Amrit said earlier, which is what I talk about all the time, respect. As simple as that. There's only one word, respect. Respect the differences, respect the similarities. It's a simple thing, as simple as that. And is there anything anyone wants to share before we thank everyone for the wonderful conversation?
Raga, if I may say something.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was going to mention this today. So now that I've gotten this opportunity, I would use it. That, people don't remember the old Raga. They just see you as you are now. Okay. So they talk about you in a sense ki, Raga is out and proud. She's living happily with her partner in London. She has twins who have accepted. In fact, they got you married, right? Your children got you married to your same-sex partner, Nicola. And, she is living happily. Why does she need to conduct all these shows about same-sex legalization in India? What has she got to do with it? But nobody realizes that once you cross the border, okay, you are no longer married to your partner. Similarly, you're no longer accepted socially or legally. And nobody remembers the violence and the mental trauma and even the physical trauma that you underwent when you were in India. So I just would like to add this and want to tell our audience that, whatever the present is, right now, Raga and I come from a privileged place that is absolutely different. But whatever we have undergone cannot be forgotten. And this actually shows what the other India is experiencing right now, even in the present, because they are not from privilege. So please do take that into account and try to understand the stories of people around you. If they ever come out to you, please help them in coming out to their parents or get them to a good, proper psychiatrist who is not homophobic. And please help them in whichever way societally possible, and be their friends, be allies, please.
Brilliant. Now you know why I bring Dr. Surabhi back so much, because she speaks so clearly, so beautifully, and really, you speak our mind and our heart, really. And thank you for being the torchbearer for us. And Dr. Amrit, Haji, please, Dr. Bhave.
Yeah, yeah. Just one point. In that comments box, I saw Kavita mentioning that the younger generation is more accepting. I would just like to comment on that. I think I completely agree with that. The younger generation these days seems to be more open-minded, more accepting these things. I mean, when I look back during my college days, I was staying in a boys' hostel, and we knew from all the gossip that in my batch of 200 people, there were two or three who were homosexuals. But it was completely under the closet. They were butt of jokes. I mean, I must add that my batchmates, including me, found it difficult to accept the normalcy of their relationship. But when I look at the next generation, things do seem to be different, especially in the urban area where I reside or where my family interacts. For example, I have two daughters, and both have friends who are homosexuals, so things are out in the open. So I know that with either of my daughters, who are the friends who are homosexual, because they have come out, they have been well accepted in their social circle. So I mean, though it's a limited group and cannot be generalized to the entire country, but then I think we have reason for hope. I think in the
Sure.
next generation, we are finding people who are quite okay with accepting homosexuals in their
Yeah.
fold.
Dr. Bhavi, very interesting point. I have to just add here, many years ago when I lived in New Zealand, I used to have there was a little, my children's friend called, I won't take his name, sorry, on TV, but a little kid who's now 25. He lives in New Zealand. He was very, as we call those days, effeminate, and they used to call him camp. Like, he was very, very feminine. His mother said to me when he was about 5 years old, he's gay. And at that time, I wasn't out at all. And I was fine with it. And so about 3 years ago, I saw his photograph on Facebook, beautiful tuxedo. He was, at his convocation, graduation ceremony, and he had pink hair and beautiful tuxedo. So I asked my daughter, and I said to her, and I say Rahul for namesake, that's not his name. I said, "Oh, is Rahul out now?" And she looked at me and she said, "Why should Rahul have to come out?" She said, "Mama, it is you, your age people have to come out. We don't need to come out. We accept people for who they are." And that actually made a point. It was really true, because this generation doesn't really, it doesn't matter. They look at people as people. At least maybe it is the privileged class. I don't know that yet. But I've done my, when I wrote my book, I traveled quite a bit into India. I went to Ranchi. I went to the smallest cities and smallest villages of Jaipur. And it was interesting. And I would tell Nicola, "Oh my God, my story, I think I have to be prepared to get chappal and tomatoes thrown at me." I got the most love, the most respect. People came and touched my feet and said, "Thank you. I can now go to my parents and tell them who I really am." And I think it has got nothing to do with the city or the town. It's to do with the attitude and the mindset and what we bring and how we raise our children. And Dr. Amrit, from here, I'm actually going to take that one word, respect. And I hope that the audience has enjoyed listening to this conversation. Please feel free to write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com. There is so much we can talk about, and I'm sure we're going to bring you back here to talk more on the subject. Thank you, Dr. Amrit. Thank you, Dr. Bhave. Thank you, Dr. Surabhi, for your valuable time and insights. I also want to thank all the audience. Fantastic interaction. Thank you, Kavita Arora, Anu Saxena, Aruna Desai, Captain Arvind Shankar, all those I haven't named. Thank you very much. Dale, of course, thank you very much. Preeti Shah.
I'd just like to mention who Aruna Desai is. She's the co-founder of Swikar Rainbow Parents Group in India.
And Aruna Desai is a very dear friend, and she's an amazing, amazing person. If you don't know about Swikar Rainbow Parents, please look it up. We will have Aruna back on a show as well. We've spoken to her earlier. And I'd like to thank our partners, Lotus Visual, for your support, digital partners, Digital Fix, who do all our social media, and our fantastic community partners, the Gay Indian Network, or called GIN, here in the UK. Thank you, Nicola, the producer of Viewsroom, and of course, thank you everybody here on the panel for putting up with us, for listening to us. If you wish to take part in our show or you have feedback, please do write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com. Next, on the 4th of April, we'll talk about something as interesting as tonight, 8 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. UK time, episode 3, coming soon to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.